somehow you have to combine all these into some single common factor. It's metric tons equivalents of CO2. These are the numbers we came up with. Anything surprise you on that?
So yeah, we're burning more jet fuel than we are steam on the steam tank.
In terms of equivalence, and there's various things going on here. Like there's the forcing factor dealing with where emissions occur. So where do the emissions occur for a jet plane? They're way high in the atmosphere versus down here. So these things come into play. And these are preliminary figures. You know, we think they're pretty reasonable. But when we look at that number for air travel, 22,000, pretty amazing. So,
And you should have that was calculated based on the appropriate assumptions, like where people were traveling and that sort of thing. That's how much they travel.
this is a hard one to do, I'll tell you. It's a hard number to come up with. If we had data available, we're actually going to suggest that the travel forms include better data. Somebody put on the travel form where you're traveling from, where you're traveling to. What we really need is the mileage. We need to know where you travel from and where you travel to. And we can do a very good estimate. We don't have that on the travel forms. We don't have a way to get at that numbers. So what we have to do is, basically we have to look at the travel dollars. And there's a factor that, you know, it's a typically accepted factor for converting dollars into a mile. And that number goes into the calculator.
Okay, I mean, that could actually be a problem. Like you said, it costs more to go from here to Detroit than it would cost to go to Los Angeles. So think about what that factor is could be.
That's totally correct. And that's why we're going to try to have the forms change so we can start tracking things back. So that we actually, you know, you come back from your trip to Hawaii, you know, or business junket or whatever it is, and okay, you put down that you went from here to Kalamazoo or Lansing or something, whatever you think, and we'll actually be able to come up with a real number on this thing, as opposed to working out the dollars. Because you're totally right. But you know, the only way we get that thing is if we get the form changed. So we're going to have some people around campus to start modifying some forms so we can come up with a better number. And another thing that's not on here is commuters. You don't see commuters up there. Commuters are part of this model, part of this calculator. And how do you come up with commuters? How do you come up with data for that? That's a very tough one. So right now, a group on campus is working on coming up with a survey that they will send out to people on campus here, and they can actually access some of that information. And we'll be able to include the last piece of the puzzle, which is missing, which is commuters.
What's included in the university fleet? Does that take into account like the ticketing cars that are going around here constantly running, different departments like vetting services that have their own set of service vehicles? That's part of their consumption.
As I recall, it's based on the number of gallons of gas that's used by the university central schools. So based on that, the student section is a student from different business line. So that's why I have that they got that information.
So you don't see it separated up. And I think, did you guys try to pick out travel, you know, let's say you're going from here to Detroit, you try to pick out gallons that aren't pumped out, pumps up here, and get those gallons coming as well.
If they take a car, yeah, that is included in it.
So it's gallon pumps out and pumps up here, the diesel and the gasoline pumps plus the travel. And some of this is hard to quantify. Again, you know, if you're 100% correct, you spend way too much time on this. Yeah.
But taking into account the fuel that's used for motor vehicles, once they use the gas that is filled up here and then filling up at stations all around the country.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. So it should include that, the gasoline out there as well. Pulling off of credit cards.
It seems like you would say do a questionnaire and determine commuters because anyone who's employed it should be technically already have their home address.
Well, that's nice.
Well, I guess again, you know, seems like you come up with a good estimate though.
A lot of students don't make a difference in the rest of
Well, we're actually trying to look at both.
Yeah.
So that one's kind of a test against the others.
Another thing it could have to deal with is, do I just come here to work and then I go home? Is that the only thing I'm responsible for is for the work? Well, yesterday I had a meeting downtown and I didn't have time to walk there. So I drove there and to bring a bunch of stuff. So that should be included as well. As best we can capture it. We're not going to get 100% correct. So it isn't just going home and coming here. It's going to have to be more than that. And our survey would account for all those things. So we have the questions prepared. We're going to test it on survey month. It should be coming out. I think we're going to shoot for next fall's.
I think you had a question. Obviously, you can go by parking spots and put down people registering the parking spots, ask for the mile or whatever. But there's so much in here.
We're going to actually, so he's saying, look at the parking spots, get some data on that. So we're going to use that as a secondary check to make sure our data from the survey is coming back right. It seems most reasonable. So we're going to be talking with public safety.
I was just curious if your boundary includes the travel for students from downstate and wherever they live to here and back. Is that part of this, or is that going to be next?
Well, what we're going to work off of is good practice in this procedure. So, on the American College and Universities President's Climate Commitment, which is something that our university could sign on to but did not sign on to. This is a commitment that I think about 605 universities have signed on to, and they sort of set up the rules of the game. Right? So if we want to play by their rules, even though we're not part of that commitment, if we report out, we can say, okay, we're following the ACUC, whatever. We're following their rules. And their rules do not include travel from downstate up here. Any other questions?
So this includes all the students as well as staff? Includes everything as far as community goes?
We have staff, we have faculty, and we have students as far as community goes.
And I think the important point from this slide is that our group is working on purchase electricity and boiler fuels, which total up to 50,000 of the 76,000. That's the part we're concentrating on in our group.
Any other questions? Okay, and I'm supposed to talk about this too. So there's an enterprise that's just started up on campus this spring term, and it's called the Green Campus Enterprise. And actually, there's some representatives here as we speak. So raise your hands. There's two of the students from the Green Campus Enterprise here. And the idea of this enterprise is to make Michigan Tech a more sustainable place. How can you do that? Well, they've chosen 3 projects for this semester that they're working on. One project that they don't choose, they have to do, is to update the clean air cool plant calculator. But we're trying to come up with some better data. We're coming up with the commuter data. We're going to try to get some better numbers on travel. We're making it a more robust calculator. The other one is campus culture and attitude. This is one that, we as faculty or staff have a hard time dealing with. We change the attitude of people on campus. We can try, but probably the one biggest thing, the cheapest, the lowest hanging fruit is what do you guys say? Conservation, right? So can we keep the lights off in somebody's office when they've left for 8 hours? What about the bathrooms? Do we need to leave the lights on the bathrooms all the time? What about the computers that are running all night doing nothing other than running? Now, do we change the attitudes of people on campus?